watched season 1 and then kind of little bit of season 2 and then put your earmuffs on, Jack. I watched 2.5.
Tayleigh stocks are down.
It was not for y'all.
I was gonna say
2.5 was for fat autistic people, fat autistic 30-year-old men.
Yo, who the f is MattCMG?
Why, hello, it is me, 3D Squelton, back at it again with the white vans. Skibbity toilet. Hey, paisanos, it's me, your boy, MattCMG, and guess what? It's time for another fish tank video. You guys know how this works by now. If you saw my other fish tank videos, or if you're even a fish tank fan, you know how this works by now. Except this time, things are a little different. While a proper Season 3 is still on the way, in the meantime, Jet and the crew decided to do a mini Season 2.5. This was known as Fishtank All-Stars Vampire Bloodgames, a new twist on the fish tank concept where 6 former contestants would all survive in the woods for 2 weeks while constantly fighting off waves of bloodthirsty vampires. Yes, this is real.
Holy crap, it's real!
So smash that motherfucking like button, or I will drive a wooden stake through your heart! And let's get into Fish Tank 2.5. I don't remember what I fucking actually wrote in the script because I didn't look at it. Get ready for far too many Dracula Flow jokes. I'm appropriately dressed with the Dracula Flow shirt today. This shit ain't nothing to me, man. In being our first All-Star season, we have a few familiar faces. And if you're watching this and somehow don't know what Fish Tank is, then what the fuck are you doing? You're not gonna be able to follow any of this shit. Our 6 contestants were John, Vance, and Letty from Season 1, Jimmy and Tayleigh from Season 2, and Ty the Freeloader. Each of them were given a specific role that they needed to play, which gave them specific perks and disadvantages. John was the paladin who was seemingly only allowed to use melee weapons, Letty was the witch which allowed her to use magic and other spells, Vance was the sniper, Ty the gunslinger, Tayleigh the soldier, and Jimmy was the medic, with the downside that he isn't allowed to use weapons. Which, you know, given his past propensity for chimping out, I'd say it was a good call if Jet didn't want to get fucking sued.
Jimmy.
Basically, the premise is that all of the fish are players, and this is basically like a real-life video game. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. It's a LARP session. Fire, kinda heat. Other past fish and freeloaders made their returns as well as NPCs, playing different roles throughout the games. It was honestly a great way to bring more old contestants onto the show, so that even if your favorite fish wasn't back competing for the prize or anything, you at least still got to see your favorites again in some way. You had Brian as the sheriff's deputy, Triss was the fortune teller, Mora was the doctor, Dunye was back as the town crier, or in his case, the town car. Greg filled in for John and Vance for a while as Greg Hellsing, the vampire hunter. Sensei Scott was there, just all kinds of fun cameos, right? Sam Hyde, of course, also made frequent appearances as well, this time as Gormitius von Goldstraven III, aka the Duke of Schitty. Schitty's the town, by the way. Bro looks like fucking Mr. X, dude. It's fucking great. I love this. This is an immaculate fit. The drip is insane.
Well, my name is Gormitios. I'm a 400-year-old vampire, but I actually appear to be 13.
Overall, I think everybody did a pretty good job at staying in character, which honestly made it even funnier whenever they broke character. They should, it would have been crazy if they got the fucking Dracula Flow guy. That would have been insane. If there's ever like Vampire Bloodgames 2, the Squeakquel, they need to add the fucking the Dracula Flow guy. That would be awesome. Honestly, this is just a really cool gimmick for the season. Jet has stated that he wanted Bloodgames to be like a real-life RPG, and I think he did a really great job at achieving that. Each cast member having a specific role to play made things a little bit more interesting, and made them all less prone to doing shit that we've already seen them do on the show. It kind of felt like a Fallout game show in a way, and considering that the MDE crew are all big Fallout fans, I'd like to think that was probably intentional. The games officially began on June 25th, 2024, but unlike previous seasons of Fish Tank where they would find ways to artificially stretch things out to make it to that 6-week end date, Season 2.5 only had a 2-week time limit. If all of the fish lost or won before that date, the show would simply just end early. Not that that ended up happening, because I feel like they just ended up dragging it out anyways, but it was worth mentioning. You know, at higher stakes than the average Fish Tank affair, if you know what I mean, if you feel my vibe. Obama. So now let's get into the events, the lore, the vibes, the tits. Day 1 was filled with a lot of technical difficulties, but through all of it, we got a pretty decent idea of what we were to expect. Jimmy was the first fish to go live, and he started by mingling with the townspeople and dropping some lore for his character. He was followed by Letty, who did the same, and then by Ty. The first official quest of the games began when Ty brought his gun to the blacksmith in order to get it fixed, in exchange for 2 big fancy rocks. Jimmy would accompany him on this quest, displaying a few rules. The main 6 contestants all have the same goal of surviving the onslaught of vampires, but in doing so they can form alliances to help each other or can fuck each other over. While teamwork was most certainly a large aspect of the group dynamic, there was also nobody stopping you from just going off on your own and doing your own thing. Otherwise, most of day one consisted of the fish getting reacquainted with each other, some meeting for the first time, mingling with the NPCs, waiting for John and Vance to get there because they were late as fuck, and just generally exploring the map. It's a bit of a world-building episode, if you catch my vibe. That night, the Schitty fair was held to welcome our new guests, but shortly after nightfall, the contestants experienced their first vampire attack. This splits the group in two, with Greg, Ty, Jimmy, and Dunye heading toward the arena, with everybody else's whereabouts unknown because the cameras were fucked. Greg arms everybody with weapons, and Ty is able to take out a few vampires before reuniting with the others. The first vampire attack ended as quickly as it began, with everybody quickly reuniting in the This was certainly the lowest stakes vamp attack, but it was just a taste of what's to come. Day 2 saw the arrival of John, as well as a ton of new lore for the Blood Games. Most notably is a new NPC character, Xavier Ravenblood, a samurai-looking motherfucker who harbors many secrets about the Duke and the vampires. He plays this weird in-between role where he's somewhat of an antagonist to the fish, but will also chill out and hang with them from time to time. Through cutscenes, because we have cutscenes now, it's explained that Duke and Xavier were once brothers, but have been feuding for over 300 years, potentially explaining why the Duke appears to be a vampire and why Xavier appears to be leading them. The extent of their beef is currently unknown for the time being, and this becomes an underlying plot thread for a while. On top of that, this cutscene also establishes that Tayleigh and Xavier kinda have a thing for each other, which pops back up every now and again. Day 3 was also pretty stacked, seeing the arrival of Vance, Airsoft Fatty's debut as King Thaddeus, or King Thaddeus, as well as some additional conflict with Xavier. That morning, with everybody gathered together in the town square, Xavier reveals evidence that John is secretly gay, showing everybody an obviously photoshopped picture of him and Ben kissing. John spurgs out as he tends to do, Ben runs away crying despite his tough sheriff persona, and they somehow find a way to blame Letty for all of this. I think this bit indicates something that I love about Fishtank in general, but specifically works best in Blood Games, which is how quickly production is to pick up on jokes and then use them in the lore. While they have obviously played into jokes in the past on previous Fishtank seasons, Blood Games has actual lore and a story to incorporate these things into. The whole joke about John being gay started the night before after an argument with Tayleigh, and they quite literally turned that into a plot point overnight. Well, I guess it's not really a plot point, it's more just like a general cutscene, but you know, it's world building, it's lore. I think it's impressive how Jet and the rest of production are able to take seemingly trivial moments like this and then put them into the lore, which also requires them to have a deep understanding of the contestants and their personalities. This bit only worked because they knew that John would spaz out, and this season is filled with moments like these where the fish's personalities are used to further the story.
And how did they know? How did they know? Wait, what? That's fail RP. You gotta give him his sword back. How did they know, Ben?
I thought it was vampire magic. You tell me that's real.
Now on to day 4, which put the Blood Games in Vampire Blood Games. That night, the Blood Games tournament began. As if this shit couldn't get more anime with fucking Xavier's ass, now we have a literal tournament arc. Goated, honestly. The Blood Games came in 2 phases. The first was a free-for-all versus the vampires. The fish would run around the arena, taking out vamps, trying not to die. Pretty simple. Phase 2 was the Blood Bracket, where the 6 fish, as well as Greg and Xavier, would fight one-on-one in a tournament bracket. John versus Jimmy, Tayleigh versus Greg, Letty versus Xavier, and Vance versus Ty. This first round went pretty much as you'd expect, with John, Greg, Xavier, and Ty moving forward. Wait, Ty? Yeah, I don't know how Ty beat Vance. That's a little bit crazy, but sure, okay. Next round was John versus Ty, and apparently Ty is the fucking MVP. How did this, like, short Asian man somehow beat the 2 most physically imposing dudes? This is fucking insane. He's got that Bucky's energy. Anyways, next round was Greg versus Xavier, and even though Greg won fair and square, the 2 agree on a tie. But Xavier ends up taking the win anyways by using a spell of Greg forfeiting. This shit is absolutely goofy, dude. And now it's Ty versus Xavier, the gunslinger versus the samurai, and you'll never guess which race is which. In an Indiana Jones type beat, Ty's gun obviously beats Xavier's blades, crowning Ty as the winner of the Blood Bracket. King Thaddeus rewards him with the Crystal Cluster, an ancient relic needed for the fish's main quest of constructing a shrine. But that's not all, because even in defeat, Xavier challenges John to a duel, to which he loses 0-3. Somebody better be fucking power scaling this shit, because Xavier's gotta be a fucking fraud, dude. There's no way. The fish claim victory that night, proving their worth to the king. So that was the the blood bracket. It was pretty fucking lit. But what bothered me was that the relics didn't really end up mattering. To explain further, the fish's mission when they weren't in the middle of a main story quest was to collect all 5 relics, but the audience has no clue what the fuck they are or why they matter. And on top of that, the ones that the fish do collect are either lost soon after or have seemingly no significance. Like, okay, they get the crystal cluster from the king, right? But then they lose it not long after, and it doesn't really matter who has it because at the end of the day, they kind of ignored the relics. You know, it's a bit of a Chekhov's gun type beat. You know, you gotta, if you're gonna introduce something, make it like, you know, more important to the plot. I mean, I guess in fairness, that's kind of like criticizing the Zelda games for like, oh, I stole this ancient fucking tome, but it's only really just a marker of how far you've gotten. It's not really like actually part of the lore, really. So, fair enough. Things would be pretty slow until day 6, where some shit would go down. Firstly, John was temporarily ejected from the games after having a pretty bad-looking leg injury. It turned out that he had a torn hamstring, but he was cleared to continue. Granted, he was pretty much on painkillers for the majority of the show, which honestly made him even funnier. But more importantly that day is in regards to Tayleigh. That day, Xavier came by base camp to antagonize the fish as usual, but this time he had a few choice things to say to Tay. So, for context, ever since Season 2 ended, Tayleigh has been dealing with a real-life stalker, and Xavier seemingly played into that by hinting that he was this stalker, prompting her to attack him and try to unmask him. Everybody else stops her, assuming this was some kind of bit, but she is later seen crying and running back to production, implying that she definitely took this seriously. I'm still very much unclear as to if this was an intentional bit by production, and if so, it was definitely in pretty poor taste, and they definitely crossed the line there. While she did return the next day, a lot of the Tayleigh-Xavier romance plotline was reworked, and the two did not really interact much after this, which again just goes to show that the player's actions can shape the story. Granted, this is a bit of a more negative example of that. You know, this is supposed to be the more fucking lighthearted, fun season where they are borderline torturing people, so this was definitely a bit of a fucking bra moment. You know what I mean? Day 7 entailed a few minor events, such as Ty being nominated to represent the fish in Schitty's presidential race, multiple goblin attacks, but above all was that John has become a vampire. This is a crazy plot twist that completely changes the dynamic of the fish. Is what I would say if that were actually true. Yeah, despite one of our fish turning to the dark side and becoming evil, this doesn't really end up meaning anything. At least not as far as like the lore goes, right? You know, John would act the exact same as he's always been acting, which in fairness is classic John, but it definitely wasn't taking the story in the direction that I was hoping. You know, I was hoping for like, okay, now that he's evil, he's gonna like try to fuck the fish over, or like, oh, maybe he lies about his vampirism. But to the other fish they don't know, and then they like plot twist, he turns on them at the last minute or something. You know, there could have been a lot of cool shit you could have done with this concept that they just kind of didn't do in favor of like just, you know, the fish kind of chilling out of character. That all being said, John does become somewhat of an antagonist as tensions between him and Jimmy begin to rise. The two content tards of their respective seasons are now at each other's throats over what began as really fucking petty. It began on the afternoon of day 9, the 4th of July, where John, by virtue of being a vampire, now has access to mod privileges and has been blatantly abusing them. As if this couldn't get more like a live-action video game, now we have characters with mod privileges. He's gonna slash TP fucking Jet. Bro is doing slash game mode 1. So anyways, John is abusing his mod privileges. Jimmy takes issue with this and spurgs out.
Fuck your fucking mod privileges, you stuttering fucking retard! Every fucking day, we have to come up with your shit!
Relax.
Now fuck off! Get out of here! Leave the fucking game!
Absolutely nobody could have possibly seen this coming. To add fuel to the fire, Xavier gives the two a challenge, which is simply to get a kiss from somebody in the town. While Jimmy tried to rizz up the blacksmith's wife, the best NPC by the way, he ultimately fails, leading to John using a charisma potion on the creature and securing a kiss from her right in front of Jimmy. For further context, Jimmy clearly had a thing for the creature but was shot down numerous times, so John winning the challenge like this certainly rubbed salt into the wound. This would quickly turn physical, with John puffing out his chest and threatening to fight, to which Jimmy would respond by spitting on him. Both of them are being complete coward pussy bitches right now, so to settle their beef, they put on the gloves and had a boxing match Season 2 style. You know, despite all the hype, you know, we've wanted to see these two interact and possibly even have conflict for fucking a while now. This fight ended up being one of the weaker ones in Fishtank history, in my opinion. Because unlike previous fights where he would go pretty much all out, Jimmy instead opted for the statue strategy, where he just stood there and guarded his core, hoping to fucking tire John out. This somehow ended up working, and after 4 rounds, they put it up to the audience to vote for who the winner was, which ended up being Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy? Yeah, I don't fucking know either. What the fuck? I don't know why you would vote for Jimmy to win that when he was very clearly being an even bigger pussy than John was. Like, listen, puffing out your chest and threatening to fight and being a tough guy is a pussy move. But spitting on a person is definitely an even bigger pussy move. I would unironically rather be shot than spat on, straight up. I'd rather you come on your hand and slap me with it than spit on me. Actually, that's kind of gay, actually. While tensions between the two remained high, they had to put their beef on pause for a bit for a canon event, the Blood Rave. That night in the arena, the fish would fight off waves of vampires while production members Bex and Cowboy played live music. This was a sick as fuck idea. It was basically COD Zombies with live EDM playing and fireworks going off everywhere. It was fucking awesome. For about an hour, as they had to quickly evacuate after their fireworks set the place on fire. Everybody made it out safe, of course, but the Blood Rave was cut short, which was kind of disappointing because I really wanted to see more of this. This is a goated ass fucking idea. The next day, though, we would have another major event. John has decided to leave the show. Was it the lore not meeting his expectations? Was it his feud with Jimmy getting to him? Was it him just being too cool and alpha for all of this beta nerd shit? No. It was because he was too afraid of looking gay. Yeah, despite being a meme since pretty much day one that John is like secretly gay, and even him playing into that meme, John got really mad when Bex was applying his vampire makeup and accidentally used the wrong color lipstick. Yes, this is why he left the show. They colored his lips purple instead of black and he thought it was gay. I wish I was kidding. This was very impromptu, so they wrote it into the story that John has been killed off.
Trying to make me look gay on makeup or trying to have a dude hump me, that's too far.
Have whatever you were going
There's
to
going to be
page
a
up.
lot of that.
Why?
Because that's the show.
My favorite thing gay
It's a
couples
gay
do is
show.
get matching.
Honestly, John's unpredictable nature is what makes him the show's biggest strength and its biggest weakness. It can either make for the absolute best content or it can completely neuter the show. He's a weird guy like that. Later that day, Jet pauses RP to announce that they will be taking auditions for a new contestant to replace John, specifying that they were looking for a girl to balance out the gender ratio and become the party's tank. I'm pretty sure nothing ever actually came from this, since they just had Creature break character and join the fish under her real name, Mary. Yet another failed bit, but honestly, I think it would have been better and a little bit more high stakes if they didn't try to replace every cast member that left. Like, the whole point of the show was that if you die, you're out, so it kind of defeats the purpose to just replace party members when people leave. The remainder of the day involved the Duke obtaining the Staff of Worms, which gave him some sort of power over the dead, even though I'm pretty sure it was established earlier that he already had power over the dead, but I don't know. He sends a group of sharks as mercenaries to disarm the citizens of Schitty, prompting the fish to head back to base camp and make a plan to take it back. They all team up for a group quest to find out where the staff is. And though they do manage to get that information, I'm pretty sure nothing actually comes of it. Though their quest was successful, the sharks end up putting the fish under martial law, resulting in a few days of them just kind of chilling at base camp. But before that, after their successful mission, Tayleigh is taken into the woods by the Duke. He mumbles for a while about God knows what until he gives Tayleigh a choice. Either she can become a vampire, or she can remain human but sacrifice two of her teammates to vampirism. To protect her teammates, she chooses the former, with Jimmy eventually discovering her in the arena.
My nigga.
This has some potentially interesting story implications, but much like John becoming a vamp, this ended up meaning pretty much nothing. And honestly, this brings me to one of my biggest criticisms of Season 2.5, which is that by the end of the season, it kind of felt like they gave up on the whole roleplay thing, with none of the fish really giving a shit about RP by that point. Like, the only people that were actually staying in character were Xavier, the Goblin, Fatty, Greg, and like occasionally Sam. It just kind of felt like the standard late game of a standard fish tank season, where everybody just kind of says fuck it and starts doing whatever, which under normal circumstances would be completely fine, but if this is the LARP season, then you need to, like, actually LARP. You know what I mean? Like, there was literally a point during the finale where Jet had to come on the intercom and ask the fish to RP. Like, I'm sure that was not the only moment, but like, that's a little bit crazy that like this is the roleplay season, but I'm gonna need to ask you to RP. Granted, sometimes it is funny when they break character, so points for being funny. If there is ever a future Blood Game season, I highly recommend sticking to the RP aspect, because that was kind of the whole point of the show, and the show was definitely at its best when everybody was in character and it like actually felt like a live action video game, right? Just keep the vibes and I'm gay, you know what I'm saying? The next few days would be relatively slow, with day 11 bringing on a new version of the Cell Challenge called the Tower. The rules are pretty simple, last person to leave the tower wins. This was about what you'd expect if you've seen the previous iterations of this challenge, granted it just had a bit more of a 2.5 twist to it. it. But that's not all. Alongside the tower, there was also a secondary cell challenge, where Jet brought on 2 fish tank fans, Oddbod and Cryokeen, and had them chill out in a room that they had converted into a hamster cage. They were later joined by Tayleigh before eventually being merged into the main tower challenge. Cryokeen going home because he's apparently a pussy. I don't know anything about, I don't know the whole Cryokeen lore, but apparently he was a bitch. Sure. This would go on for a few days, resulting in Letty winning the challenge by betraying Creature. Later that day, Tayleigh is killed off by Jet's character Charon, which brings us to the finale. Alright, we got this guy mowing the fucking lawn outside in the middle of the fucking video. I'm just gonna hope that the mic doesn't pick this up. I don't think that it will. But fuck it, we ball. On the last day, a funeral was held for Tayleigh, and Charon calls for the fish to finally take out the Duke. The Duke shows up and the two groups taunt each other for a while, with Duke trying to get Greg to say the N-word, or rather a word that sounds dangerously close to the N-word, in order to summon the army needed to defeat him. But Greg is too wholesome of a guy to actually say it, with Jet threatening to unlock the nifty ending, aka the bad ending, if he doesn't. Bro is having an actual straight up crisis here, because even though it isn't actually the N-word, he is too wholesome to say something that even sounds close to it. But Greg is eventually able to call upon his army by the power of enunciation, and much like a lot of plot points, this ends up meaning nothing. I think they just wanted Greg to say the N-word.
I call upon the power of the Gregor Negger.
Oh, and by the way, slight tangent. Can we talk real quick about how Greg is the fucking GOAT? I mean, I kind of glossed over this back in my season 2 video, but I absolutely love the fact that they originally brought Greg in as a one-off meme that probably wasn't supposed to last more than an hour, but he ended up becoming a fan favorite and basically stayed for the entirety of the season and ended up becoming basically the main character of 2.5. Similarly to Chris, Greg is just a positive force who manages to make every moment in the show memorable, which is even crazier when you consider that he doesn't really vibe with MDE's humor and has a generally family-friendly brand outside of the show. The fact that a guy like Greg, who for all intents and purposes shouldn't really appeal to the general MDE fan base, has managed to become everybody's favorite is nothing short of great. He was putting in real work to be as entertaining as possible for 2.5, and it just would not be the same without him. Greg it up. I love Greg's introduction in season 2 because it's so fucking like just the way Sam says Mr. Beast is so funny to me. I don't know why. It's nothing special. It just makes me fucking giggle like a schoolgirl.
Give a big fish tank round of applause for Mr. Beast.
But now it's time for the final battle, with the fish all split up on a mission to weaken the Duke. While Vance defends the shrine and the relics, because apparently those are relevant again, the rest of the group are gathered together, with their goal being to bless 5 sites around the map in order to bind the Duke to the physical realm, allowing him to be harmed. Despite putting up a pretty formidable fight, soloing waves of vampires, Vance is eventually overwhelmed and slain, leaving just Letty, Ty, and Jimmy as the remaining fish, with some help from Greg, Trish, and Oddbod. But mostly Greg. The party would eventually make their way through the sites, fighting off vampires along the way. By the time of their 4th objective, they were all pretty fucking gassed. Greg was rapidly losing energy, Jimmy was about to fucking puke, shit was getting pretty dire at this point. It was getting rough out there. But they managed to power through and bless the final shrine, which leads them all the way back to Schitty for the final battle, which entailed, as you might have guessed, fighting off waves of vampires. After a short break, they finally get to the final boss. The fish versus the Duke. And now Xavier, who apparently is now joining the Duke, is now on his side? I don't know, maybe it's me. Apparently I missed something, because I thought these two were like fucking mortal enemies, but sure, okay, yeah. That kind of leads me to another criticism that I had of 2.5, which is that because it's so lore heavy and is much shorter than the standard fish tank season, each day is a lot more dense than usual, which is great in terms of like, you know, actually getting content, but it also means that if you miss a day because you're like at work or school or something, then when you come back, you would be completely fucking lost. Like, there were so many things that would happen when I was at work and couldn't watch, but then even when I would go on Twitter to try and catch up, even more shit would go down, leaving me perpetually confused. Like, I thought Duke and Xavier hated each other, but now they're teaming up? Like I clearly missed a cutscene. Like, I did not unlock this shit in the fucking gallery, dude. Admittedly, this criticism is based more on my personal experience with the show and not really anything the show did inherently wrong. It's just kind of hard to keep up sometimes. Yeah, you get me? You fine? You feel me? Anyways, enough bullshit. Final battle. How bad could this be? And I'm glad to say that this final battle was absolutely fucking bonkers. You had Greg and the Duke doing like a fucking Dragon Ball Z beam struggle, fucking tap X repeatedly type beat. Motherfuckers are like dying and getting revived left and right. Oddbod returns in his wolf form. You got Chris running around just screaming like a fucking Borderlands character for no reason. It was fucking wild. It was pure, unbridled chaos in the most fish tank way possible. Finally though, Jimmy hits the Duke with the holy water, and the fish all curb stomp him, defeating him once and for all. But before he dies, his final words are that Greg and the rest of the fish were the real vampires the entire time.
Blasted fool, Greg! Did you not realize it was you? You all who were the vampires the whole time?
I had a premonition. There's another child, half vampire out there. But if I'm a vampire, then I am nobody.
No, you were pregnant with John's half vampire baby.
I'm pregnant with John's half vampire baby.
No.
No, that's it. Then it should fade to black, probably.
What the fuck is going on? And yeah, that's it. That's the ending. Personally, I wasn't too big on the ending. Well, sure, yeah, the fish did achieve their goal of killing the Duke, which was their goal since day one, and the battle and mission leading up to it were definitely entertaining. It just didn't really feel like as triumphant as it should have been, in my opinion. I mean, the fish were all kind of low energy. It just kind of didn't feel like they had that dog in them, you know? There's also just so much lore that I wanted to know, right? Like, what happens to Schitty now that the Duke is dead? You know, that last minute plot twist opens up so many doors, and yeah, like, it's obviously a bit, but it's an unsatisfying bit, you know? And most of all, we never learned Xavier's true identity, which was teased since his very introduction. Granted, I think the point of his character is that Xavier is his identity. There's no, like, secret to unfold, but, like, don't tease me shit if you're not gonna deliver it, you know what I mean? And if this seems like I'm nitpicking, that's because I am. While I personally was not very satisfied with the ending, that's only if I take it completely seriously. At the end of the day, Fish Tank is a comedy show, so a comedic ending that makes no sense is totally par for the course.
Come here, big boy.
My balls itch. You wanna hear my balls? Gaming. But that has been Fishtank All-Stars Vampire Bloodgames, and honestly, even though I had some major criticisms of it, I think this is by far the best season of Fishtank yet. I obviously left a ton of stuff out, but that was just because the season was so dense that it was really hard to pick what and what not to include, so I opted for the most entertaining in my book. On a technical level, this is also the most impressive season, and though it was a bit higher concept than the usual Fishtank affair, they make it all work really well, and I can't wait to see how a lot of this stuff makes its way into the actual proper seasons. And honestly, I think the best part is that this season really felt like Jet just getting a bunch of his friends together to LARP in the woods for 2 weeks, except he could just write this off on his taxes, you know what I mean? Like, that sounds like a diss, but I mean that in the absolute best way possible. I wish I could LARP in the woods and make money from it, you know what I mean? Even if I didn't fully vibe with the story all the way through, it was definitely fun to watch everybody else have fun, you know what I'm saying? And I know this may be looking a little bit too deep into it, but Fishtank 2.5 has honestly changed the game when it comes to live streaming. I don't think there's ever been anything like this done before, like literally live streaming a high-budget LARP session. I don't know, I think it's pretty telling that almost immediately after this season was announced, that big streamers like Kai Cenat and Ice Poseidon announced very similar ideas, indicating that this was definitely something to keep an eye on. I would love to see future Bloodgame seasons where they continue to switch up the formula and do even crazier shit. Like, there's so much cool RP stuff they could do, like, you know, like a zombie apocalypse season, a murder mystery season, fucking Fish Tank in space. Fuck it, give me like a Xavier spinoff. I'd love to see more of that guy. The Adventures of Greg Hellsing, the animated series, or some shit like that. While season 3 seems like it's probably going to go back to basics with a fresh cast of non-Fish Tank fans, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think I might be looking forward to the half seasons even more because of the sheer variety of what they can do. Like, they're already doing the cell 24/7 in the off season, so I think the sky's the limit by this point. Shout out to the Fish Tank crew. You guys made a great season. I cannot wait to see what you guys got next. Thank you, iFunny, Greg It Up, Circumflex, Vertical Bar, Jimmy Fucks Dogs. I've been MattCMG, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Does Josie show up? Josie show up! When Josie show up!
So fucking special. But I'm a freak. I'm a weirdo. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here.
Let's get some pussy tonight.